Click the links to my channel here over at SubScribestar or now over at Odyssey. They have got their thing figured out over there. So there's members, videos, and whatnot. So Frozen Pop Culture Theory, Part 2. And this will be, I'll use the Ironheart example. Have you noticed that almost every day, if you follow pop culture, seems to be a slow news day for Hollywood and kind of pop culture in general? How every new offering feels plastic and recycled. How the stories are, if you bother to watch them, are just thinly concealed woke propaganda. And you have to, if you go back to like 2015, I would say there was a big resurgence, a big energy in pop culture because you had Disney Star Wars. And people thought that Disney was going to just kill it. They were going to do a fantastic job. They had done such a good job on Pirates of the Caribbean, and they had a long history behind them. And then 2015 Star Wars rolls around, and people look at this, and it's unrecognizable. And then they didn't follow it up, but Sony followed it up with Ghostbusters in 2016, and you had that kind of 1-2 punch where that was telling you there was a significant shift in Hollywood. They'd gone mask off, and with the Disney Star Wars, people thought, well, maybe it's just one bad movie, and the follow-up's going to be even better. And no, it was worse. So you've got where shows now, whether it's Disney Marvel or Disney Star Wars or any other properties they offer, and Indiana Jones is coming out next because they own that as well, and Pirates of the Caribbean, they're indistinguishable from one another. It's a series starts and it ends, but it's just the same plucky mixed group of non-whites who are teamed up to get the MacGuffin to save the day. And if there's a human antagonist, it's guaranteed to be blonde-haired, blue-eyed, standard central casting, German or English. I mean, the last Indiana Jones, that was shocking in how bad it was. You look at, there was five Indiana Jones. You think you should be printing money with Indiana Jones. You got Harrison Ford still alive. It's like, okay, you set up, by movie 4 or 5, you should have been setting up the next Indy, and he should have been most of the movie. But they don't have another Indy because they want the next Indy to be female, and it absolutely kills them that it can't be non-white because it just wouldn't fit in the time period. But so 3 out of 5 of those Indiana Jones movies, can you guess who the antagonists were? So they were the Hugo Boss from that war 70-odd years ago. And there's a scene in Black Adam where you're like, we didn't watch it. Yeah, you weren't the only ones who missed that movie. Where there's some, and the thing is, with a lot of these movies, it wouldn't have taken much to make them good movies. But that's not what Hollywood's interested in. There was a scene there, that was a girl power movie, where she has like a brother and a husband or something. It was just like all the men just kind of sit around, and they're in some kind of like third world warm sandy camel spot, and the woman is just taking charge. And you're looking at the Hollywood writers like, what are you talking about? This is insane. But there's a scene where this vaguely brown third worlder is whining to the British accent speaking United Nations World Police about how, we was kings and they took our resources and brown girl magic. And what happened? Well, the movie didn't break even. So there goes. And The Rock, why do they keep putting in him and things? At some point you can look at the movies and just goes, okay, this actor is like, his time has come and passed. So where we are now is that Hollywood has painted themselves. He had a part of it is, well, he's in bad movies is part of it, but part of it was also was it either Trump in 2016 or some governor's race where he was coming out for the left wing person? Maybe it was Trump in 2016, where he couldn't just keep his political things to himself. So what happened was Hollywood has painted themselves into a woke corner, and they're trapped because the audience has lowered levels of tolerance for woke. We're on a hair trigger now. So even if Hollywood backed off on the heavy-handed messaging, it's too late. It's not going to matter. You'd have to back off all the way. You'd have to have somebody like me write for Hollywood. And that's not going to happen. The perception is reality is also kicking in because so much correlation of non-white characters just being just atrocious, unwatchable, horrible. Or you've got like Mary Sue type of characters. It's like directly correlated with pigmentation for the actors, or there's going to be girl power with Daisy Ridley being the super Jedi, floating in midair type of stuff, and you look at the original Disney Star Wars and like this, there's no resemblance whatsoever. Or there's gays now and everything. I don't think they've gone into the trans thing too much, but like that's only a matter of time. So even if a movie, even if in some movie where they dial it back and it's not that bad, the movie is still going to bomb because the perception of, if we see female or if we see brown, then we lose interest. And like the Marvels with Brie Larson and her two affirmative action sidekicks, nobody saw that because they just looked at it and they're like, yeah, we're out. And it wasn't that bad. Or what was the other one? Madam Web with Sydney Sweeney. And did she have two brown sidekicks as well? I gotta admit, I never saw that one. Absolutely. That was an even bigger bomb than the Marvel, so congratulations. And if you combine female and non-white, it's like kryptonite to the audience. I guess one worse would be if you had the guts to make them gay as well. You would just kind of have a movie black hole. And movies, the thing is, are not in a vacuum. The past 5 to 10 years, 15 years, have been pretty spicy. And Ironheart, I mean, you got to kind of go back to the Obama years as well. Ironheart might have worked decades ago when people were a little bit more tolerant for propaganda, and the propaganda was much lighter back then. But, you know, the past 5 years, we've had the Soros-funded globalist riots, and people are just not interested in this type of thing anymore. You have to wonder how many black girls are interested in an Ironheart type of character, because the other demographics don't give a shit about it. And if you're a left-winger who's listening to this, doubt, you think, well, you know, it's just because a black female can be for anyone. But that's not the left-wing argument. The left-wing argument is always people need to see their own representation. So if you have a black female, then that's marketing to only a black female audience. So that's part of them painting themselves into a corner. And they're not showing up to see the movies. Occasionally you get the Mary Sue type, the Rachel Leishmans and whatnot, who go watch these movies. But there's just not enough Rachel Leishmans of the world, the college lesbian wine drinker to support this kind of stuff. So the other thing you may have noticed are the variations on a theme. The sequels, reboots, prequels, whatever. Kevin Smith made fun of it pretty well with his Jay and Silent Bob Part 2. And it starts to hit you that newer stories are dying out, where even the only time I think now you get new stories would be foreign markets, where even Ironheart isn't a new story. It's based on the original Iron Man character. Tony Stark was Iron Man, I think, from the 60s. So Disney and the original comics, if you want to go back to their back and start reading the original, they were so much fun. What a little time period to see those original Iron Man costumes as it progresses over the years. So Disney comes along and has them put out the comic where a POC girl steals the tech that somebody else created so they can sell it to the black female audience that doesn't exist. And like at no point in their echo chamber does anyone raise a hand and go, wait, none of this makes sense. She steals something that's already in existence and you're trying to paint her as a genius. She didn't create it. Tony Stark created it in the universe 70 years ago, I think it was created. None of this makes sense. A child would point this out. It's like, she didn't create the Ironheart. Tony Stark did that. He's pretty well famous for it. Why don't you just create something new? Or you ask, well, why don't you just stick with the character that has been around since, I think, the 60s is when Iron Man came on the scene. Your audience, and one of my favorites, your audience mostly isn't non-white at all, and it's absolutely not black female. That's got to be less than 1%. Or if you had to create a black character, why not create an original character, not an offshoot type of variation character like Riri Williams or Miles Morales? Those characters are pathetic. You already have Spider-Man. His name is Peter Parker. The answer is, well, they hate European people. And they don't like browns any better, but they just use them. And you might have noticed that Disney and the rest of the Hollywood making movies, well, those movies are not making money like they used to, and it doesn't seem to bother them. They just keep making woke cancer. So when you look at the big picture of Hollywood, you see some ideas created in the in the pre-woke Bolshevik cancer phase, and somebody like Disney comes along, or Amazon, or Netflix, and buys the rights to these stories, and then you start seeing endless Marvel, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, even the He-Man animation, Rings of Power, all these variations on the themes that were, successful decades ago, because you buy the rights to these IPs, they're not going to put Indiana Jones, Star Wars, or Marvel, or all these names on the shelf. They have to make something with them. Where they take the stuff from like pre-90s and then they update it, I'm making air quotes, for a modern audience, as Leslie Headland said, we're leaving money on the table by not making everything gay, non-white lesbians. And you look at her like, you're probably, I'm assuming, a gay non-white lesbian. And then you go, but objectively, the things you're saying are just BS, because Lord of the Rings, for example, book translated into every language on earth, made a hugely, hugely successful. And then when it came out into the movies, also translated every language and also hugely successful. And Rings of Power is, gay, woke, mixed race space communism, and it's not selling at all. It's just a waste of money for Amazon. And the other aspect of that is, yeah, but Amazon has the money to waste. Like if Rings of Power, say it's probably going to lose $200 million, it doesn't matter to them at all. I think they spent like 700, 800 million on it, and it's not going to translate into increased Amazon Prime memberships or however that works. So they update it for the modern audience, and the modern audience is actually moving away from big screen Hollywood. But also that means to them, they go, we're going to make it gay, race swapped, and female, which is bizarre because the modern audience doesn't want brown, female, or gay at all. And then there's this kind of weird elephant in the room feeling of if it's kind of could be summed up. I mean, there's so many examples, but one of them would be there was an article about students on a school bus. And it's like these. The article is about, they don't show the kids because they're underage, of course, but the students on a school bus beat some girl up, and the black author of the story used a stock image of like a blonde kid shaking his fist or shaking another blonde kid or something. And then when you go online and you go watch the video, the blonde girl was the victim. And the aggressors, the attackers who were beating up a child, were not blonde. I mean, they're just so bad. I remember them. There's a guy on Twitter called White Men Are Stupid in Commercials or something, who shows these kind of things, where there's a burglar alarm company showing you how their alarm stops like home invasions. And there's a commercial of an old white guy, like in his 60s, in a ski mask, but you can see. And he's trying to break into a house, and there's a mixed race couple looking down at him, and like, our alarm is stopping the major demographic that commits home invasions. 60-year-old white men wearing ski masks and having crowbars. You look at this. I mean, this is absolutely, absolutely insane. And then one thing is, like in They Live fashion, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's forever. And that equivalent philosophy, globalist humiliation ritual, is found in movies, comics, streaming shows, any vector from which they can disseminate some sort of narrative, which is just propaganda, and it's recycled from the original stories because they have name recognition, where they can't even create something new because the audience would look at it and they would just reject it. So Amazon has to do something like Rings of Power because they're counting on the name recognition of Lord of the Rings, which is, biggest fantasy on earth, to get people to watch. Then they race swap, and you end up with Afro elves and hobbits. And again, the bizarre gaslighting absurdity of a Afro elf talking to a Euro elf, talking about how we're one family, we're one tribe. And I'm looking at this like, is everyone else on mushrooms or something, where it makes sense to them? I feel like more people just need to be kind of upfront about this and ask why this is the case. And then they immediately ad hominem and straw man, and they go, so what are you, some kind of istophobe? Well, I mean, that's not relevant to the question. Why are these actors not all the same ethnicity playing carrying out Tolkien's story, which was written, post World War I, from his experiences in a small English village? Like we read the books, we saw the original movies. just none of this makes sense. So what you're saying is no, that's not relevant. None of the ad hominems and strawmans are relevant. It's like, why aren't the actors all at least appearing English, or at least all appearing like they're in a village together? They're different races, they're different ethnicities. People live together and intermix, and they all look roughly the same. You've got people who are separated from each other by 10,000 miles. None of this is logical. The willing suspension of disbelief just doesn't go this far. I kind of have a feeling that if we win in a few decades, they're going to look back at this period, or maybe Hollywood will just burn itself out and laugh at how ridiculous it was that they had access to what should be cash cows, and they threw it away because woke, which means anti-white. They hate the European people so much, and they hate the European characters, and they hate the white English authors who created most of this stuff, most of these stories that they're taking these things from, so much that they had to throw money away to put this heavy-handed messaging in. And the other part is you can't have organic stories that connect to people because it would be politically incorrect, because the best stories are politically incorrect. But they're also true. They're based on the family, the blood tribe, your natal, your nation, and you removing the outsiders. And I was thinking how you don't get organic stories. And an example of this would be like, what if you had a story today about the Irish, and the Irish come together and they decide to throw off the invaders who are there currently, and the invaders are not English people. There are invaders in Ireland now, have come from far away. They're not Irish or European at all. And like, that would make a great story, right? The Irish, the underdog, the marginalized and oppressed, removing the invaders from their country, using some techniques from the old days, sort of thing. You'd never get a story like that. In fact, if you tried to make that movie in Europe, at least, you'd be arrested for making. They've made the idea of such things illegal. I mean, Europe, Ireland is headed for some interesting days where that kind of thing is probably going to kick off. Probably won't make a movie about that either. So instead, what you end up with is the Marxist found family of a diverse group of affirmative action hires come together in Willow to all get along in some kind of Calergy nightmare. And nobody cares. Nobody's spiritually invested in other people. Because ultimately, whether you're left or right, well, no, the left does have outgroup preference, doesn't it? They're the only people on Earth who have outgroup preference are white left-wing people. Literally everyone else is in-group focused, in-group preference. They're for some reason, the white liberal is the only one who the globalist propaganda has connected to, where even like the MAGA normies are still in-group preference focused, and every other group is as well. Because you're race first. You're invested in your tribe, in your genetics, and passing on your DNA. You're not invested or willing to sacrifice for another tribe. That has never made sense. In Rings of Power, you can see there's a queen. If you want to go back and watch it, it's not as painful as watching the Star Wars Holiday Special, but it's pretty bad. You see it. You know what? I guess it's so bad it's crossed over into being good. Where the Star Wars Special is, you're not going to be able to get through that without pharmaceutical assistance. You see the blackest diversity hire queen, and she's in some diverse city. And I mean, like, diverse, like you have Indians, Africans, Middle Easterners, various Asians. None of it makes sense that they're all together and they all clearly are from different parts of the world. Brazil is diverse. You can look at diverse cities, and as European, American, Canadian, Australian cities get more mixed, and it just gets worse and worse until they start falling apart. And you can look at the city in this Rings of Power, and you know that whatever war you think you're fighting, you've already lost it. So like what is your core? The core of a story has got to be your tribe. It's the Lord of the Rings equivalent of civic nationalism. None of it makes sense. You're fighting for, like, what way of life? A commercial zone? You're fighting for Bank of America on one side and funding the gay pride parade. So, like, a couple of years ago, you guys were doing Occupy Wall Street. What happened to that? Oh, don't worry about it. Bank of America came along in an AMG with a suitcase full of money. And now we're funded by them. So at some point, somebody's going to point out that the emperor has no clothes. I mean, I do with this little channel on YouTube and Rumble and whatnot. But Hollywood is not going to end with a bang. It's just going to end with a whimper because people are slowly leaving it behind to watch live streams and other smaller, more organic. Go watch a 10-hour War Strike live stream. They want to watch more organic social media, and that's not politically correct. It's like, how do you know it's not AI? Because they use racial epithets. Or the audience might be 100 to a few thousand people, but you're getting you're getting raw. You're getting it raw. You're not getting the same format of the 30 to 90-minute big budget stories, and that is a big cultural loss when people can't make movies anymore. But the time is also approaching where AI and CGI. What is this other article? Is no, that's not it. That's another video I want to do. Oh, this is a fantastic. It's like one of the worst, where they got lost, where they started off making things gay, and it's like it was not connecting to the audience, so they just made a nothing movie. And it seems like most of Hollywood has ended up making these kind of nothing movies. So eventually, with technological assistance, you might be able to take very small investments of money and go from live streaming back into organic storytelling, where you're making movies or weekly streaming shows. And we're talking about, with the assistance of AI, probably for an affordable amount of money. Because ask yourself this: where are the new stories that are starting their own universe? And think about how different it was to create new stories, say 50 years ago, when in America you were selling to an almost entirely European American audience. That was your market capture, that was your demographic. It was way easier when everyone was all on a very similar page compared to now, where the country is now, it's about 53% white. It's impossible to tell globalist stories that last, because globalist stories are built on a false foundation, on the relatively recent Moses Mordecai Levy theory of Marxism, which has evolved into the current theory of globalism, which is an even lamer version of Marxism, guaranteed to work even less well than Bolshevism worked, which is just say, as well as the Chaz worked for its 2-week time period. That's why those stories don't work. They're just nothing stories. Disney had another good story, I wish I could remember the name of it, where there's animation and they're in space, and it's a mixed race couple with their kids, and the kids are gay, and so Disney's telling the story of this mixed race gay kids and the relationships, and like, oh, we have a name for people who like do that kind of stuff, push that kind of propaganda. Like, this is modern Disney. These Epsteins. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.